Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to the show. You're watching Let's Talk with me, Anwar Mir. Today we are discussing Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson. What next? Well, ladies and gentlemen, of course, it's been a very eventful week, quite dynamic in Parliament and indeed between Rishi Sunak, Prime Minister Sunak, and former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. I wonder what you make of it. It's been rather concerning. Bear in mind also that we have a number of resignations leading to the by-elections which are imminent and of course a general election possibly within the next 12 months or so. With me to discuss this issue are three guests and I'll introduce you to them in a moment. But for now, allow me to say and remind you that it's an interactive show. Should you wish to participate by posing a question to our panelists or indeed having your own say, please dial the number at the bottom of your screens and you'll be put through to the studio where we can hear what you have to say. As I say, we have three guests. My guests in no particular order. We have Mr. Paul Reynolds of the Liberal Democrats, who's an advisor on international defence and economics affairs. Mr. Reynolds, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome.
Hi.
And we also have Fajli Bibi, who's the President of the Conservative Friends of the NHS in the Midlands and the Vice Chair of Conservative Friends of Bangladesh. Fajli Bibi, welcome to the show.
Hello, how are you?
Thank you very much. And we also have Councillor Abdul Jabbar, MBE, from the Labour Party and of Oldham Council. Councillor Jabbar, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Assalamu alaikum and good evening.
Welcome, Saham. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go straight to my panellists to see what their take is on the recent events. And I'm going to begin by asking Mr. Paul Reynolds. Now, Mr. Reynolds, you've had a long track record with the Lib Dems. You've stood on a number of occasions as a parliamentary candidate for them. As I understand it, you've got some 50 years of allegiance and participation with the Liberal Democrats. You will have seen the issues between the Prime Minister and the former Prime Minister and what's recently been going on, the comments that were made very recently between them and indeed a number of other consequences of that. You've seen the resignations that have also taken place. And against the backdrop of that, we have a very worrying situation in terms, certainly for the Conservative Party, where the polls are suggesting that they're going to be absolutely destroyed in the forthcoming general elections. What's your take on what you've witnessed this week?
Well, many a slip twixt cup and lip. I mean, we'll have to see. A lot of water is going to pass under the bridge between now and the general election. But what's really going on here is the Conservative Party, of course, partially as a result of the electoral system, is a coalition, as is the Labour Party. And it's a system that we, as a party, suffer from to a great extent. But the system rather produces, it favours having two parties backing it up across the House of Commons. And so they are coalitions. Labour Party, Conservatives are coalitions. But the Conservative Party coalition clusters, if you like, have rather been a bit mix and match because you've got the small government Thatcherites who are now in a small minority. They were very much in favour of small government, small spending on this type of thing. You might say David Davis in that category. And then you have the sort of more neoconservative types, like Michael Gove, who are not so worried about things like government debt and how much the government is spending and that type of thing. They're very, very keen on raising defence expenditure. And you've got all kinds of other factions as well. You've got the kind of pro-EU internationalist faction and so on and so on. So you've got a much wider groups of clusters in the party than you used to have. And it's all, the cards have been rather shuffled recently. So you've got different points on the spectrum, and it's a little bit unraveling at the moment, I would say.
Sure, but what significance does what you've just said have in respect of the two protagonists, if I can call them that, of the Conservative Party? You've got, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. It seems to be the case that there is a clash of both personalities. They themselves have their own talk over you, but they themselves have their own followings. We've seen what Nadine Dorries has done, for example. And
obviously the mainstream media like to portray things as personality clashes, and no doubt there is a bit of a personality clash, and we don't know what goes on, between individuals. But in politics, it's never really about personalities. It's about sets of principles which people are arguing over. And the kind of small government, perhaps a bit more pro-Brexit group in the Conservative Party, which Boris would represent, are not happy with the current Rishi Sunak approach to government finances, and so there's a very deep-rooted clash of principles involved. And we should always take the personality thing with a little bit of a pinch of salt, I would say.
But those personalities have been there for some time. I mean, those principles, rather. I mean, they both served in the same cabinet. You will recall that both Rishi Sunak and former Prime Minister Boris Johnson were working extremely closely indeed. They were much of a pair, so to speak. And those principles appeared to be quite systematic and quite working together, and they did work together rather well. So why is it now, you say, that there is a clash of principles? Because it seems to be the case that the media on this occasion is actually right. If you remember the press conference that Prime Minister Sunak undertook recently, where he completely disagreed with some observations that were made and seemed to suggest that he wasn't very fond of what Mr. Boris Johnson was doing and what kind of things he was standing for. That seemed to be nothing to do with principles. It seemed rather to be with, effectively, and I'll put it quite bluntly in colloquial terms, stabbing in the back.
No, I mean, these things go on in politics, of course. There wouldn't be it wouldn't be the first stabbing in the back in British politics. But I think that the interesting thing is really, you have to remember what happened when Boris Johnson was no longer Prime Minister. It was going to go one of two ways. Well, it could have gone one of three ways. It's going to go one of two ways, which is it was either going to go back to sort of supporting the city and international finance and, let's be sensible and let's continue with our managed decline and this type of thing. Or it was going to go back to a more sort of Thatcherist small government thing. So it went that way with Liz Truss, and then that was pretty catastrophic. I mean, she was badly briefed and so on, and it went downhill quite quickly. And so, and there's a view amongst some of my people I know in the House of Commons that tell me that a lot of that was, there is a view now that Liz Truss was set up, because now the economic situation that Rishi Sunak is facing is rather worse than the situation that people are blaming Liz Truss's exit on. So there's a sort of a nasty thing going on about that. But nevertheless, this is still a fundamental difference in approach between the kind of let's be sensible, let's have managed decline, let's borrow more money for a bit, see how we can get on and put interest rate. Or there was the sort of more free marketing thing, which is let's reduce taxes and let's get the economy going that way. Well, that was that was a clear policy divide at the time, and so a lot of the Conservative people on the sort of more market orientated rather blame Rishi Sunak for the demise of Liz Truss, and more importantly, the demise, as some people see it, of a more free market, small government approach, which is espoused by that group.
I see. Well, look, let me bring in Councillor Abdul Jabbar. Now you've heard what Mr. Reynolds has just said. He says it's just a disagreement about policy and principles, and that really is it. Do you agree?
Well, of course I do. I mean, all the analysis is to some extent is correct. Well, how is it relevant to what's going on now? I mean, people out there are really suffering. They're suffering with their rents, with their mortgage, with their bills. They can't afford to pay for foods. They can't afford to buy children's essentials. That's a reality. And that's happened after 13 years of Tory government. And incidentally, the first 5 years, Paul government, the Paul party was part of it. And the austerity measures, by the way, that was bestowed on the people of this country wrongly, and it was completely failed economic policy. Paul party was part of it. And he tried to make a case for PR today. And I don't think, there is a case for PR perhaps, but it's not relevant, Paul, really. We just need to address the issue that's in hand. Now, what the Tory party is doing is absolutely ripping itself apart again. And we've seen this happen over months and months. We've had 3 prime ministers. After Johnson resigned, he still wanted to be controlled. So he prevented Sunak becoming prime minister by putting Liz Truss up to be the prime minister. And look what she did. She trashed the economy, and people are paying for the disastrous mini budget that she gave to this country. But it's outrageous. I'm absolutely angry sitting here, thinking about what this this Tory party has done to these people of our country. And, they are just fighting. There's no solution to the problems that everyday people are experiencing. And that's what we should be doing. And that's why Keir Starmer says that we need a fresh start and we need a new government to deal with the issues that we've got in hand. And I'm afraid, Paul, to some extent, I accept your analysis and you're quite detailed of it, but that doesn't offer any solution to the people who are suffering right now. And we need to talk about that. And I hope when you get the chance to speak again, you can mention something, how we get out of this terrible mess that we're in at the moment.
Councillor Jabbar, let me also ask you this in relation to the tens of thousands of families whose loved ones passed away during COVID. And there were various rather harsh and stringent restrictions, quite rightly, I suspect, in terms of what they could and could not do. But on the face of it, it seems to be the case, according to the what we've seen and about to read from the forthcoming report, that Boris Johnson was in breach of a number of those rules and regulations which he himself oversaw. What is the public to make of that? That triggered, as some people understand, that triggered his resignation. And it was quite clear that he was making no secret of the fact that he described the committee as a kangaroo court. What do you make of? What are our viewers supposed to think?
Well, I think. Well, thank you for raising that very important point. People died through COVID. People died alone. People died not being able to say goodbye to their loved ones because the government, Boris Johnson's government, brought in the rules supposedly to protect people. In the meanwhile, he was not observing it. He was above the law. I think there's 2 issues here, Anwar Bhai. Firstly, we know that he broke the rule. That's why he was fined by the police. That's not the issue. The Privilege Committee is looking at whether he misled Parliament or not. And that's, he's seen the interim report, and the finding of which he knows, right, is so damning that he can't be an MP. So before he was pushed, he jumped. And that's the thing. So in terms of your question about what do I think, what do people think? They think that the Prime Minister, at a time when UK faced, United Kingdom faced the biggest challenge after the Second World War, the Prime Minister let the people of this country down by his own action. So he was promoting something and he was doing something else. And that just simply isn't good enough. Now, we know that he broke the rules because he was fined for it. But not only broke the rules, he actually misled the Parliament. And that's the inquiry that the Privilege Committee is giving the interim report to, and it's going to be published later on. By the way, he submitted a letter recently. I don't know what's in the letter, but apparently they're to consider that. But when you see the report, and incidentally, just to be very clear, that committee, the Privileges Committee, which is looking into this, whether he misled Parliament or not, it has a Tory majority. So you need to understand that point as well. I'm absolutely convinced that these people have looked at this objectively and in line with the proper procedure that operates within Parliament when an investigation of this nature is undertaken. So
Okay.
I'm very, very confident of that.
Sure.
Before even it's made public, before
Yeah.
he's had the privilege of having an interim report,
All right.
and he's making all kind of wild statement about the committee, about the chair. I mean, that is just Boris Johnson. When he's in the wrong, he's always blaming the opposition. He's always blaming somebody else. It's never his fault.
All right.
And you
All
know
right.
something else?
Go on.
He's damaged the reputation of politicians in this country so badly. It's unbelievable. Believe me, British politics has suffered because of Boris Johnson being a prime minister, because his conduct is far from being parliamentary. And in many, many occasions, he's absolutely lied. And this has been found out. And it's been found out on this occasion. And it will be proven when that report is published, it will be proven. And that's the problem. But even when he's in the wrong, when he's gone through all this, he's still in the right. He's criticizing the committee, he's criticizing the process, and he wants to, of course, come back.
Okay.
And I'm afraid that's a problem for the Conservative to deal with.
All right.
But
Well,
in the meanwhile,
before
people of this country is suffering badly, and this government is not offering any solution to their daily problems.
All right. Well, look, before I go to Fajli Bibi, let me ask you this. I mean, your party is little better, isn't it? I mean, the fact is that Sir Keir Starmer also was alleged to have breached the COVID rules. There is also a dichotomy, a division within your party. Let me ask the question. Hang on. Let me ask the question. There is a split within your own party. You have the left who completely despise Sir Keir Starmer and what he stands for, and they believe that he's simply too much to the right and perhaps a closet Tory. The split between, as I say, within the party is quite harsh in the sense that if you look at social media, members of the Labour Party and those who have been supporting the Labour Party in preceding years say all sorts of things, rather unpleasant things about the party, the state that it's in, and in fact personal attacks against Sir Keir Starmer as well on social media. So as I say, I mean, your party isn't much better, is it? And some people might say that your party doesn't offer any solutions to deal with the crisis, the economic crisis, which the entire world faces and is in at the moment, not least because, and perhaps significantly, as a result of the war that we see taking place between Russia and Ukraine.
Okay, 3 points. Firstly, Keir Starmer was allegedly broken the COVID rule. He was investigated by the Met Police, by the police in Tyneside, and he was found not to have broken the rules. So can I please correct you on that?
Well, no.
Secondly,
I mean, we've all seen the photographs. He had a beer in his hand, or a bottle which looked like beer. There were more than half a dozen people in that photograph, and on the face of it, there are a number of suggestions that these were breached. Now, he may well have given explanations, but the fact remains that when you're holding a beer and having a conversation, in a room, in a closed environment, at that particular time, Joe Public wasn't able to do the same thing. So, I mean, the photographs are very clear. It may well be the case. The photographs are quite clear. But the more significant point, because we are talking about the issue and the subject is the clash of personalities. Hang on. I will. I mean, the issue really is about the split between the Conservative Party, Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson, and what we can expect next. So I'm simply asking you about the issues that your own party faces.
Okay, that's fair enough. But I need to clarify this. The police investigated Sir Keir Starmer, and they said he did not break the rules. He did not break the rules. In the case of Johnson, the police investigated and they fined him. That's the difference. So next question is about division within the Labour Party. Of course, we are a broad church. Of course, we've got left, centre, and slightly centre-right in
no, it's not just about being a broad church. They're attacking each other. Just go on social media. You'll see the kind of things that the left is saying about the right. And
I'm a member of the Labour Party, so
yes,
I don't need to go into social media. I know the discussion goes on in conferences, in meetings, things like that. So I'm aware of that. I'm not
sure it's fair to describe it as a discussion. It's all-out war. If you see what's happening with, the former leader of the Labour Party and what he's facing, he's actually had the whip removed. It suggested that he will not be able to stand, Jeremy Corbyn, it suggested that he will not be able to stand in the very seat that he's represented for a considerable period of time. And, he's effectively being told that he's no longer welcome in the Labour Party. It's not about discussions taking place, it's war taking place.
Well, look, I'm aware of what you're saying, right? But I thought this topic was about discussing Rishi Sunak and Johnson.
Yes, but to be fair, whilst we're talking about the issues within that party, there are issues within your party as well, are there not?
No, if you let me answer, Anwar Bhai, then I'll try to give you an answer. You can't interrupt. You keep interrupting me.
Well, I must do, because you keep using adjectives which do not describe the current state of your party and the reality. So if you're saying something which is factually incorrect, I have to take you up on it.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. The reality is, in May, during the local election, Labour won more seats than anybody else. The Tories lost 1,000 seats. Just a month ago. That's the reality. That's what people think. We are offering an alternative. That's why we're asking for the government to go to the public and get a fresh mandate. Because since the last election in 19, a lot has changed. And, what we've seen is successive prime ministers coming in, not dealing with the issue in hand. Now, you say, what's the alternative? We have got a whole range of issues that we have set out already, and people are responding to that. And that's why let's test it out. Let's put the ultimate test of who is right, who is wrong to the great British people. Let them decide who should rule this country. That's only fair. That's what we're asking for. Nothing else.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we must go on to a short break. When we come back, we're going to carry on with this discussion. Do stay tuned. We'll see you in a short moment. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. You're watching Let's Talk with me, Anwar Mir. Today we're talking about the issues with the Conservative Party, and in particular the spat between Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. What next for the country leading up to the general elections, which are likely to be within the next 12 months or so? That's, of course, after the three by-elections that are likely to be taking place, and the campaigning is, of course, underway in those constituencies already. I've got three panellists to discuss this issue with me. I've got Paul Reynolds from the Liberal Democrats, Fajli Bibi from the Conservative Party, and Councillor Abdul Jabbar, MBE, from the Labour Party. Just before we went off air, we heard from Mr Reynolds and Mr Jabbar, and we were coming on to Fajli Bibi to see what her take is on what we've discussed. Just a gentle reminder, this is an interactive show. Should you wish to participate in this particular programme, there is a number at the bottom of your screens. Do feel free to call in with your question or indeed your comment. Fajli, just before we went off air, you heard what the position was as regards the Labour Party from Councillor Jabbar. You also heard Mr Reynolds, although I'm not sure that was the Lib Dem position that he was airing. I think he was being rather fair to the Conservative Party. But what's your take on what you've witnessed over the past week or so?
Politics. That's what politics is, isn't it? Everyone in politics, I've actually learned that no one's your friend, and it's quite clear from what is happening in the media and in the party, in both parties. People are just playing politics, and there isn't anything else I can say about that, is there?
Well, there is, because you say that people are not friends in politics. Both characters which we're discussing today, Prime Minister Sunak and Boris Johnson, they were very good friends at one point in time. They were seen at all times inseparable. They had a lot of policy discussions and policy framework put together by them jointly. Both of them, of course, working closely together. In fact, they were, as I say, they were inseparable, and like two peas in a pod. Why is it that you say, well, there's no such thing as friends between them, and that there's nothing to worry about? I mean, you seem to simply just brush it off. That's not what we've been witnessing over the past week or so.
I'm just saying you're witnessing politics. Like whichever party you look at, there is conflicts. And today, yesterday they were best friends. Today, you can see in the media they're saying there's a war between them both. And the war is because of certain mistakes that's been made. Rishi's in a different position now than he was before. So there is a lot of decisions that he has to make. And personally, I think Rishi's doing a fantastic job.
Okay, well, the country is paralysed. Interest rates are through the roof. People cannot afford to pay their mortgages. Energy bills are through the roof. People cannot afford to heat their homes. There is, as I said, there is a cost of living crisis. Inflation is sky high. You're saying Rishi Sunak is doing a good job. Which planet are you on?
Are we blaming Rishi Sunak for COVID, for the war in Ukraine? I think we have to look at what's happened in the country in the last 3 years.
A prime minister's job is to deal with the challenges that are faced by the people. He's not dealing with them very well, is he? Because if you look around the globe, COVID was an international phenomena. Ukraine is impacting countries around the world, not just Great Britain. So taking a comparative approach, you can see that other countries are dealing with it a lot better. You seem to say that we can't blame Rishi Sunak, but he is in overall charge of the United Kingdom. The buck stops with him. The people are suffering. Why do you say that he has no responsibility, that everything is rosy?
I'm not saying everything is rosy at all. What I'm just trying to say is that what we're facing with the war in Ukraine, I'm sure you've heard in the media only today that Ukraine have said that most of their crops have been damaged, and the price of oat and crops will be going up again. So the impact of the war in Ukraine is having, it's not just in the UK, it's globally. Someone like me who works at a global, I can see this problem everywhere. Yes, UK is facing the issues, and but I just don't think that we can blame the government for what is happening. There is a global issue here. But yes, you've just, I'm sure because of what's happening with Boris, it's been hidden in the media. But recently, Rishi went and formed an agreement with USA, because we've actually seen Brexit. And because of Brexit, there's a lot of rebuilding of relationship at a global level that needs to be done. The issues that Rishi is faced with, it's not something that could be fixed straight away. The relationship we've had with Europe, and because of Brexit, that's all broken down. So we need to look at alternative ways of bringing the country back. The inflation, it is a big issue, but, we've got the Bank of England that's looking into how to help people. If the inflation doesn't come down, yes, cost of living will go up.
But you see, it is not the job of the Bank of England to help people. It is not the case that you can simply say that, signing a contract or an agreement with the United States is going to resolve everything. The situation, as you clearly see it yourself, is that the entire country is very disenfranchised, not with just your party, the Conservative Party, we can see that from the opinion polls, but with politics generally. It is your party that has been in power for the past 13 odd years or so. It is your party which has been at the helm of what seems to be a huge amount of infighting within your own party. You can see the fragmentation within your party. And it is your party which is simply saying that there seems to be nothing wrong with what's going on. They're looking at it with rose-tinted glasses, as I say. And they seem to be suggesting that everything's going to be okay and that the country is in safe hands with Rishi Sunak. Surely, the entire country cannot be wrong. The polls, there is a reason behind the way the polls are, indicating that surely you can't insult the intelligence of the electorate, can you?
No, I'm not insulting them, but I think we need to look at it with open eyes, because the challenges that this government has faced, no other government or the leader of any country previously have actually faced this. This is something that, the pandemic, the war, Brexit, this is something that Britain has been facing for, and it's not, I'm saying it's not a quick fix, and it's not something can be quick fixed. But we just need to give Rishi's only been in position how long? And we need to give him some time. I mean, you go into a new job and it takes time to actually get to grips with everything. And he is doing a great job. But, I think we're being harsh. He's fixing a lot of issues that we've already heard that's been said, he's actually fixing those issues as well as rebuilding the country.
Well, I must very briefly take you up on this before I move on to Mr. Reynolds. In terms of no other countries facing it, well, COVID's impacting every country, as I said at the outset. In terms of Ukraine, again, every single country around the globe is impacted by that phenomena as well. In terms of Brexit, well, that's not the only challenge facing Great Britain. Brexit was something that was championed by your party. We were told it was oven ready. It was not. We were told, or given a number of promises and expectations about what would happen, about £350 million a week, was it, that was going to be contributed or paid into the NHS as a result of Brexit. None of these have been materialised. Promise after promise broken by your party, the Conservative Party, and you're standing here or sitting here simply suggesting that, give it time. What policies has your party got that's going to take us out of this quagmire? What policies is Rishi Sunak setting out that he's going to say is going to be this magic wand that's going to simply change everything before the next elections? Because come the next elections, your party is simply going to be faced with a significant test, won't it?
Can I just correct? When I said neither country, I was talking about the previously, before pandemic came on. So I'm saying the previous, none of the leaders previously have ever faced such a challenge like what the countries have been facing with COVID and with the war in Ukraine. And Britain have also the extra Brexit issues, those challenges I'm saying.
But hold on, I must pause you there. I mean, the fact is, there have been a number of challenges in different formats before your party came to power on this occasion. You may remember a number of challenges when the Labour Party was in power from 1997 during Prime Minister Blair's time. The war in Iraq, for example, there was a recession, the economic situation that followed on from that. And then Gordon Brown came in, obviously as a result of the issues that were there and the challenges that were being faced by the Labour Party and the country as a whole on that occasion. So it's not really fair to say that this is unique. But the fact is that the fact is, if your party cannot deal with these challenges, why doesn't your party step aside and let the Labour Party have a go?
Look, can I just ask you, who started the war in Iraq?
Which
government started? So we were actually in war.
No, your point was
government then started the war in Iraq.
It doesn't matter who started it.
War in Iraq
it doesn't.
And war in Ukraine.
Well,
two different things.
Well, it's not different. No, it's not different, and I'll tell you why. It doesn't.
War in Iraq started by.
Hang on.
Ukraine war wasn't started by this government.
Hang on a second. It doesn't matter who started the war, simply because your point was that the challenges faced by your party are unprecedented. That is incorrect. It doesn't matter who started the war. And if you want to talk about who started the war, I didn't see the Conservative Party opposing going into Iraq. So please, perhaps not, don't go down that road. But look, more to the point. My question simply was, if your party cannot deal with the challenges faced by this country, why doesn't your party step aside?
Well, the public will have a vote in 2024 when the next general election is. So at the moment, we are, we have to give Rishi some time. In politics, a week is a long time. So we do have one more year before the general election will take place, and we will see what happens then.
Paul Reynolds, how much time should Rishi Sunak be given by the electorate in order to...
Well,
yeah, go on.
Well, I think that people were expecting a kind of a professional, safe pair of hands type of prime minister. But he's turned out to be a dreadful disappointment, and just PR and spin and not much else, and there's very little substance there. But I think the public, as we were discussing, I mean, the public is absolutely fuming. I mean, the public knows that the UK is not in decline, it's in accelerated decline. And its economic position is much worse than all of the other countries in the G20, bar Japan in some respects. And of course, you can choose any statistic you like, but on balance, the UK is faring much worse than our competitive and rivals, if you like. And so people can see and they can feel that the country is going downhill. Things don't work. You can't get a doctor's appointment. I mean, just the whole thing is grinding to a halt. And what do they see in the government? What do they see? They see that the public perception is a bunch of rich people squabbling amongst themselves over spoils. And the general public believes that the Conservatives have got their noses in the trough in all these contracts and the pandemic. And whether it's true or not is a separate question. This is what the public believes and what the public feels. And so people are looking for a narrative. People want to know, what do you define as the problem and how are you going to fix it? And that's what people are not getting. It's making them very frustrated because people are likely to vote Lib Dem and Labour at the general election in large numbers. And who knows, there might be a expanded Reform Party with Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson, who knows? But the fact of the matter is the people are going to be voting against the rich kids. You know, that's what they're going to be doing, and they're fed up with it. Unfortunately, a lot of people will be voting Labour, but the people I talk to, they say, yeah, I'm going to vote Labour, or I'm going to vote Lib Dem in the south of England, mostly voting Lib Dem. They're all voting against the Conservatives. But the thing is that basic question, how do you define the problem? Why is Britain going downhill so quickly? And what are you going to do about it? Unfortunately, you get nowhere near an answer from Keir Starmer. He's sitting on the fence. In fact, he's worse than that. He's hiding behind the fence that he was once accused of sitting on. You know, there's nothing. Brexit? Oh, I don't know. You know, economic development? I don't know. What's your policy on the budget? Well, we don't really know. What about the vast debt? What about interest rates? Well, you don't know. You know, it's all very difficult. There's nothing concrete. There's nothing solid. People are going to vote Labour, but they vote Labour because they're voting, or they vote Lib Dem, but they're going to be voting against the Conservatives. And people will be voting for the Lib Dems, especially in the south of England, for one particular reason, is that even though we don't talk about it much these days, people know that we are in favour of solving the big problem, underlying problem, which is that we have a attrition relationship with the European Union. And we have to have a closer relationship because that's one of the reasons why the economy is going downhill so quickly, more than others. And the other problem is that the Labour Party in particular have nothing to say about the corruption. Where are their detailed proposals, as the Lib Dems have, for dealing with corruption? The general public is fed up with it, and they want corruption dealt with. And they want a closer relationship with our markets, our nearest markets across the water. And that's the top line of the problem. And maybe, you know, when we get near the election, we'll be hearing something from Keir Starmer about what he's planning to do. But, you know, what he's doing is he can see the chaos in the Conservative Party and the factionalising. And I think he's probably rather overdone it when Keir Starmer tries to get unity across his party. And you look at what's happened to Jeremy Corbyn and stitching up him and so on. Now, you know, I don't agree with hardly anything Jeremy Corbyn's ever said. But I mean, you know, he's been treated disrespectfully. And what he's done is that he's overdone this unity, you know, kicking people out for the slightest little, you know, disagreement or a hint that they might quite like the far left or something, and they get turfed out. I mean, he's overdoing it. There's been a backlash amongst the local parties. And you can't rely on the Labour Party.
Sure. Well, just a few observations, if I may, coming back to you. I let Councillor Jabbar defend his party, but in terms of Jeremy Corbyn, you say that you don't agree with anything that he said. I think it's fair to say that as an anti-war campaigner, you yourself and your party did agree with an anti-war sentiment in relation to Iraq. So you do agree with a lot of what Jeremy Corbyn stands for. But
I was one of the people that's writing Charles Kennedy's speeches. I was chief political advisor to coalition forces in Iraq in 2003.
But I want to labour something that, if you'll excuse the pun, I want to labour something that you dwelled on, and that is that your proposition that there is, and you actually used the word, corruption within the Conservative Party. What do you mean? Apart from the COVID contracts?
Formally speaking, what we do as a party is that we look at this thing in the round. We wouldn't say, it's only the Labour Party or only the Conservative Party that's the cause of corruption. What people are angry about how these contracts were awarded during the pandemic, sort of millions of masks being ordered and then they were sent away to be burnt because they didn't comply with the regulations. And all of the people who had, a relationship with these companies that were suddenly sprung up out of nowhere and suddenly got 20 million quid contracts and things like that. People are very fed up with that. But the problem is not so much, we understand, the problem is not so much the Conservative Party per se. The corruption lies within the civil service. And it's the politicians who don't make a stand and take advantage of the culture of corruption across the UK political system. People taking advantage of it. And if you look at because it depends how you define corruption, of course. But you might say conflicts of interest, it might be a better term. But they're all over the place. It's all the way through government. And we have been trying to do something about that. We'll have a legislative program on this. And, the general public is not stupid. The general public knows it's in local government, it's in central government. Everyone's, getting rich by trying to get a duty contract here and there. We all know the procurement processes are all fixed and everyone knows about it. And everyone knows what happened in the pandemic with all of those contracts. It was a nudge, nudge, wink, wink, I've got a mate, kind of stuff that went on. And the people are just fed up with it. The Conservative Party are not fully to blame for all that. It's more in the civil service. But they were participants in it. And you can see that is the case. And the donors and all this type of thing. And people put two and two together. People say, they're all in it for themselves. They're all in it for making money. And then they notice that everyone went to Eton and everyone's super rich and mega rich like Rishi Sunak. And where are the politicians in the Conservative Party and the leadership of the Conservative Party that, have had a proper job, working in a shop or, doing something in the real world? One of the things I've learned is if a Conservative politician says to you, I'm in business, it means they're in investment banking. They've never been near a factory.
Well, we must go on to a break in a moment, but just in one sentence, you make a very serious allegation of corruption. If, for example, it is quite as rife as you say it is or imply it is, why aren't the enforcement authorities doing something about it, or even the parliamentary standards? You have the Nolan principles, for example. If there has been a breach,
in our party we made a study of this and how it all works.
Yeah.
And how the system works. There's a thing called ACOBA, which is there's a system for approving outside appointments. If you're a civil servant, and let's say you're a civil servant responsible for, let's say, purchasing helicopters or something in the Ministry of Defence, and then what you do is you leave your job and go and get on the board of the company that you've been buying helicopters from, that type of thing. And then you get a golden handshake of 15 million, and then you get on the board. And for the general public, it does rather look like a reward for the contracts which have been handed out. And there's a system for approving people moving out of government and into private sector, especially into going to work for companies which they've been buying from in the billions in previous years. And what they do? They say you can go. You can go and work for the company that you've been spending billions with over the last 10 years, but you mustn't lobby government for contracts for 3 months. And everyone laughs about that, but it's true. And then how many people are there to enforce these rules?
Sure, I understand. I understand. I must cut you there only for time reasons. Ladies and gentlemen, we must go on to a break. When we come back, we'll carry on with this discussion. Do stay tuned. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. You're watching Let's Talk with me, Anwar Mir. We are discussing the current and the recent issues between Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. What next, indeed, is the question that we are posing. And with me to discuss this issue are three guests. We have Paul Reynolds from the Liberal Democrats, Councillor Abdul Jabbar, MBE from the Labour Party, and Fajli Bibi of the Conservative Party. Before we went off air, I was hearing, or you were hearing, from both Fajli Bibi and Paul Reynolds, and Paul Reynolds made a number of propositions against the Labour Party and indeed Sir Keir Starmer. And I think it's only fair that we ask Councillor Abdul Jabbar to set out his stall in defence of his party. Councillor Jabbar, you've heard what Paul Reynolds has just said. Apparently, your leader is hiding behind the very fence that he used to sit on. What do you have to say?
Yeah, thanks, Anwar. I'm glad you've given me the opportunity to come back to Paul. Look, Paul is a great analyst, and listening to him, some of his analysis is very, very good, and obviously he's very good at what he does. But let me deal with two things that he raised. First of all, the corruption issue, and then I'll come back to the attack on the Labour Party. So, look. Corruption.
Jabbar Bhai, hold the thought. I've got a caller who's been waiting for some time. Let me take the call, and obviously I'll come back to you. Hello, caller.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. Sorry for interrupting you, Jabbar Bhai.
No, go ahead, caller. What would you like to say?
I just want to say, as a member of the electorate, obviously you have somebody representing the Conservative Party. I mean, as the electorate, how are we meant to take our parliamentary democracy seriously? Boris, for whatever you might say about him, he did have a mandate. He was elected. Rishi doesn't have any mandate from the party or actually the electorate voting in a general election. So, I mean, you're basically at the moment, democracy is being threatened because of what's how you're actually governing, the country.
But you see, caller, the way governance in the United Kingdom works, we have a parliamentary democracy, and the way governance works is different to how it works in the United States of America, where you have a presidential system where when you vote, effectively you're voting for one of two presidents, usually. In the United Kingdom, the parliamentary democracy is such that when you vote, you're voting for a party, and that is why you don't have a president, you have a prime minister. So you have ministers, of which there is one prime. You have the prime minister. So you have the head of that particular party, and all they do effectively is become the figurehead of that party, who is the party which was effectively voted in by the electorate, because it's a first past the post system, where the party with the majority of seats in Parliament goes on to govern. So that's how it happens. So I'm not sure it's a threat on democracy.
I respect that, and sure. You obviously are very knowledgeable. I understand that most of the electorate do, but when people are canvassing and knocking on the doors, the name that was being presented as obviously the leader and the Prime Minister of the country was Boris Johnson. That was the name you presented in the general election, sure. And other than that, nothing else is actually.
Let me pose this question to you, or rather, let me hear what you have to say about this. Do you think Prime Minister Sunak is doing a good job, or do you think that the challenges are not being dealt with adequately?
You say he was around the table with Boris.
He was,
as was Sajid Jawed. He was being basically.
He was sitting next to him. Yeah.
Hold on. He was in government, and he was obviously under the doctrine of collective responsibility.
Yeah.
Was he not?
Yes.
As was other ministers. That's how also our democracy works, and obviously Parliament works. Yeah. So he was there sitting around the table. It's not like he's just come onto the scene in the last few months.
Yeah.
He's been there sitting around the table. He's been there when Boris was campaigning.
He was Chancellor of the Exchequer, very key post.
Sorry?
He was Chancellor of the Exchequer, very key post.
Yeah, absolutely. So he was there. He was actually economising all of Boris's politics.
Yeah.
But that's why I say, as an electorate, it seems like we've been, we're basically we've elected, but we haven't got who we basically voted for.
I understand, and I suppose what you would say is that irrespective of the technical definition of the parliamentary democracy, the reality is that as Joe Public is concerned, I'm not saying you're a layperson in that respect, but as the perception may well be that, look, we did not vote in for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. How on earth is he the Prime Minister of this country? Good question. Fair point. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. Thank you for calling. Councillor Jabbar, it was a very interesting call that we just took there. But please do answer the question that you were taking before I interrupted you. And perhaps if you can also deal with the caller's proposition that how is it that Prime Minister Sunak has this particular mandate, or effectively is at the helm of this country when the public didn't vote for him?
Well, let me deal with this question that the caller raised.
Yeah.
I think the caller is absolutely right to raise this issue, because what we got is a completely different person than what they voted for at the last election. I mean, what happened in 2019 was Johnson said there was an over-ready deal to get Brexit done. That's the word that he used. There was no plan whatsoever. And then, of course, he was promising that all the immigrants that were coming in would be stopped once Brexit was done. That never happened. And then, fortunately, it's right that nobody anticipated COVID to come along. But, a Western government like ours, there was a study done, there was an assessment done how to deal with emergency of this nature in 2016. And there was 32 recommendations. And don't forget, the Conservatives was in power then, and none of them was acted on. So we were ill prepared for the COVID situation. But to go back to the leadership thing, so, he engineered the downfall of Theresa May to become Prime Minister. And only reason why he supported Brexit was that was the only chance he's got of becoming Prime Minister. So it's all selfishness of Boris Johnson who led to this. And then we had a situation that because of his foolish act and being above the law, he had to resign. He then still was in charge. He prevented Rishi Sunak coming through the membership of the Conservative. By the way, there's around 150,000 people across the country who voted not only to elect Liz Truss. Liz Truss then had a mini budget that trashed the economy completely. Our financial record, the financial credit scoring went down very badly, and the Bank of England had to intervene to stabilize the market. And as a result of that, interest rate had to go up, and we're in debt by millions of pounds, and ordinary people are paying for it. And then they had to get rid of Liz Truss. And then Rishi Sunak didn't actually even get a vote from a single Conservative member. He simply got the backing of the parliamentary members of the Conservative Party. So in terms of a coronation and how we find ourselves at this moment in time where Rishi Sunak is actually leading the country, but he never faced an election. He never even went before his own party member. That's where we are. And is it any wonder why people like the caller and others calling for a general election now? So that's one aspect of it. And the real problem is that he hasn't got a solution. I mean, is he better than Johnson and Liz Truss? Absolutely, he is. He's trying his best to do a good job. But unfortunately, because of the division within the Conservative, he's been undermined. And he can't have the time to do what he needs to do because Boris Johnson behind the scene is stabbing him in every opportunity that he's got. That's a problem. Now, that gets me back to talk about the corruption that Paul talked about and then the attack on Labour Party. Look, Boris Johnson has been one of the most disrespectful and controversial prime minister we have seen in this country ever. He was involved in all kinds of issues about refurbishing his flat, where he got the money from, somebody lent it to me, somebody gave it to me, I got a loan and all that. And people are fed up with that. Then we had the situation where he appointed the BBC Director General. And that Director General, by the way, a few weeks before he got the appointment, he fixed a loan for £800,000 for Johnson. I mean, look, for ordinary people, £800,000 is like winning in lottery. But these rich boys is nothing for them. And that's why people are fed up. And that's why people don't trust the politicians. That's the reality, I'm afraid. And it's all down to Johnson and his colleagues, the way they've undermined politics in this country. Now, in terms of the attack that Paul, my dear friend Paul, the fellow panelist, made on the Labour Party, Paul, I can't sit here and let you get away with this. Your party was in coalition with these lot in May 2010. And the first thing you did was to actually dishonor your promise to abolish tuition fees. I mean, that was the flagship policy of your campaign during the election in 2010. Okay. The next thing you did was to abolish education maintenance allowance that gave literally hundreds of thousands of young people to go from GCSE in the schools to A levels. And those two policies were flagship policies of your party. Now, you went in bed with the Tories.
The reason I'm laughing, just abandoned his promise to abolish tuition fees. So he's done exactly the same thing as Nick Clegg. That's why I'm laughing. Sorry about that.
No. It was never put to the, my friend, it was never put to the electorate. Your flagship policy in 2010 was that you would abolish the tuition fees. And all the young people who are about to go to university, were in university, they voted for that. And Nick Clegg, in the lure of getting deputy prime minister and the cars and the briefcase and the houses and everything else, abandoned the people of this country. So I'm not taking any lectures from you, my friend, and you have no policies. You might laugh, but you look at what's happened in the following election in 2015. What happened to your party? You got 57 to 58 MPs in 2010. And you came down to, was it 8 or 9? Something like that. So the people, it's not me who is saying it, the people gave their judgment. And you were part of developing an act called the Welfare Reform Act of 2013, which took away, literally hundreds of pounds from people who are at the sharp end, including taking child benefit away from more than 2 children in one family. I mean, absolutely terrible, and you ought to be ashamed of that record. And I hope in future, if you ever get the chance, you set that record right. Because of that act alone, many hundreds of people are suffering every day. And the poverty level in this country has gone up. Children are living in poverty because of that. And we're better than that. We're the 6th largest economy in the country. We can afford to pay for the children in our country. We're going to be the future earners and the taxpayers for our country. And your party was part of the government.
Councillor Jabbar, let me take a quick call before I come to Paul and hear what his response is. Hello, caller.
Yeah, hi. I'm calling from London.
Hello there. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
You're live on air. What would you like to say?
Yeah, listen, I'm on the topic Rishi versus Boris. You know, what next? You have your team Rishi and team Boris, although Boris is no longer there, but his supporters seems to be. Anyway, what next? Not much, really, because they've only got 12 months, and that's not enough for them to do anything. So, you know, Rishi's, although he does a better job than Boris, he probably, I don't know, some way, funny way, he belongs there, but he doesn't have enough time, and the Conservatives will be no more, come election time. So, I don't know, it's depressing, but listen, I wouldn't vote for the Labour Party either, because let's face it, you know, they're no prize either. I mean, what's his name? Keir Starmer, is that his name? Mr. Boring, you know, he has no policies. He's promising the world. He's not in office. He says he's going to do this, he's going to do that. Remember his 5 thing, but he doesn't say how he's going to do it. So I don't know. Listen, he doesn't have to do anything. You know, you say he's hiding behind a fence. He made that fence, okay? He's not sitting on it anymore. He built that fence, you know, so he can hide behind it. He doesn't have to do anything. And, you know, the Conservative Party, they're going to burn themselves anyway. So I don't know what. And, you know, your Lib Dem politician, they speaks well, but I don't think the general public have much faith in them either.
Okay.
I mean, I pretty much agree with so much that's been said, but, you know, they're all right in their own funny way, I suppose.
Okay, let me ask you this. I mean, if you say that the Conservative Party is imploding, if you say that the Liberal Democrats don't really have any substance to them, if you say that the Labour Party are sitting on a fence which they themselves built, so to speak, who will you be voting for, if anybody, and who would you encourage our viewers to vote for?
I'll tell you, I'm glad you asked, because I was going to tell you anyway. Listen, I'm glad we're not living in the US. It's just two-party over there. Here you have three parties, but they're not much different from one another fundamentally. I'll just vote for the Green Party just to stick it to them. Do you understand? I would vote for anyone, but any of them. I'm sorry. That guy from the Lib Dem, he's quite mellow, but that's what you are, yellow, mellow, banana party. Look, not too much faith in any of you. All of you, you have your say. I swear to you, the general public, they don't care. And you know, it's not too many people are calling in. I know that's like laugh if you can, but it's quite depressing. But you know, I don't know. I don't know what to make of any of this. I have no faith.
Thank you.
You understand?
Thank you for your call, Paul. It seems to be the case that a lot of our viewers are disenfranchised. They're not very impressed by either of the three major parties. They're threatening to vote for some of the other lesser-known parties in order to be able to have a protest vote, if I can put it like that. What do you say about that in reply to our caller? But also, could you please deal with, perhaps if you can, the observations made by Councillor Jabbar, where he effectively is alleging hypocrisy?
Well, I think we've learned from our mistakes on the tuition fees issue, and it was one of those things that the Labour Party have latched onto. And, you know, I think we've moved on, and we looked at this very carefully, and we had a big consultation process to try and get a better approach to the financing of tuition at universities, which is now it's expanded to such an extent that, you know, it's a much... I mean, when I went to university, only 10% of people went to university. Now it's, you know, kind of 60%. So, you know, the costs are much greater. And, but, you know, the thing is that if we want to talk about hypocrisy, you know, Keir Starmer promised to abolish tuition fees. And now he's gone back on that promise. So, you know, I think, you know, you're on a bit sticky ground here. And I think now is the time for the Labour Party to stop going on about Lib Dem tuition fees, especially given their own record on the matter. And let us not forget that the proposals which were brought in on student financing were brought in by the previous Labour Party, by Tony Blair. So, you know, the Labour Party is wearing a bit thin, I would say, to the Labour Party, this thing. But I think we can all agree that the public is fed up to a dangerous level, in our view, and we're worried. We don't think that there's a realistic prospect of civil unrest, but it's just not healthy as a country to have such deep disenchantment with the political system. And then if any politician talks about the political system, they say, oh, you know, I've never, on the doorstep, nobody's ever said, oh, the political system was to blame, you know. But they do now. People do say that the system stinks, you know, the public is crying out for people to be clear, you know, tell us what the problem is and how you're going to solve it.
Well, Paul, you're right to an extent that the people are when you say fed up, our viewers seem to be quite angry at politics as a whole. Politicians haven't exactly been painting themselves in a very good light, and I think you touched on earlier on in your very able representations about some of the reasons why you say that people are, fed up, as you put it, and angry, as I put it. Our question in this program is, what next? What can our viewers, over the course of the next 12 months, expect from politicians, from your party, from politicians as a whole? And I know that you're very well respected in politics and the political circles, not just within your party. But what can our viewers expect? Are they to remain angry and be putting forward votes by way of protest, or can politics itself recover in the United Kingdom? Because although somebody suggested that there isn't a long time left and we cannot salvage reputable politics, a week in politics, as the cliche goes, is a long time. So what's the reasonable foreseeability?
Well, I think there are some underlying problems here, which each individual political party has got to grapple with somehow. Because if the political parties don't deal with them, who will? Of course, many people say, it's not yes minister type of thing. It's not really the politicians that control everything. It's the security services, or it's the whatever, or everything's controlled by America or something like that. Sure. People come up with this stuff, but if it's not the politicians who are going to sort out the problems, who will? I mean, that's then the public are thinking along those lines.
Sure, thank you. Thank you.
The public should expect clarity from the political parties.
Right.
I mean,
thank
our
you.
problem is we've got too much policy.
I must stop you there, only for time reasons, Paul. Thank you very much for joining us, also to Fajli Bibi and Councillor Abdul Jabbar. And thank you also, ladies and gentlemen, for watching. Do stay tuned on the next occasion for Let's Talk, when we will be back, inshallah, in a couple of weeks' time. But otherwise, do stay well and keep us in your du'as, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.